Hi, grade 10 and 9. This is chapter 11, punctuation, abbreviations, and numbers. It's a long chapter. We're going to divide it into parts and we'll deal with them in chunks. Let's see what other topics this chapter is talking about. This chapter is dealing with periods, exclamation points, question marks, colons, semicolons, comma, dash, parentheses, quotation marks, italics or underlining, the apostrophe, the hyphen, abbreviations, numbers, and numerals. You will find that most of the information here is just old, or maybe there are many stuff that you know. Just focus on the things that are new. We'll start as usual with the pre-test. So pause and try to finish it, please. Here we go with the first point in this lesson. It's that period. And just a reminder, of course, that we put point at the end of declarative sentences or imperative sentences. The exclamation point, we put it at the end of exclamatory sentences, like, what a beautiful day this is, or look out. So there is some sort of emotion in the sentence. We also use the exclamation point with interjections to express strong feelings. Yeeks! Hooray! Ow! Good heavens! So when I want to communicate some sort of emotion, or you feel a sentence is communicating like heavy emotions, you have to use an exclamation mark. Next, the question mark. Use a question mark at the end of direct questions only. Who would like a part-time job for the summer? Which call should I answer first? Those are examples of direct questions. Why is he emphasizing the word direct questions? Because we have what is called an indirect question, just like indirect quotation. He asked whether I needed a work permit. I wondered how much the job would pay. He's not asking, he's reporting a question here, so we don't put a question mark. Besides, we don't put the sentence in the question form. We don't say, how much would the job pay? I said, how much the job would pay. Normal sentence. It's not a question. So there is no question mark here. Now, the three of them, question mark, exclamation mark, and period, are called ending marks, just to know. Next point here is the colons. The colons are the two dots. Next point here is the colons. Now, how to use colons. What are colons? You can see them here in blue. Those marks are the colons. Use a colon to introduce lists, especially after statements that use such words as these, namely, following, or as follows. So we don't use colons with all kinds of lists. Only the lists that are preceded by the word these or this or that or whatever demonstrative pronoun, the word namely, the word following, or as follows. See the examples. Friday's test will cover these areas. Because of these here, I'm putting the colons and I'm listing the things I need to list. The other example, he requested the following: a screwdriver, a level, and a wood screws. Again, because of the word the following, I'm using the colons. Now, you don't use the colons when you have a verb or a preposition. I cannot say, for example, the best non-animal sources of protein are, and then put colons. It's wrong. When I have a verb like any kind of verb, whether are or any other verb, or when I have like the example here, a preposition. My sister likes to decorate her hamburgers with lettuce, tomato, mustard, ketchup, and relish. This is a list as well, but because of the preposition here, because of the verb here, we don't put colons. So when do you put the colons? With lists, when I have these, the following, namely as follows. The other rule for using a colon is to introduce material that illustrates, explains, or restates the preceding material. What does that mean? Look at the example here. I often wish my parents had had more than one child. They worry too much about me. The second part of the sentence here is an explanation for what's before. It's more like when you're using the semicolon between two independent clauses. I think it's the same way. So it's either or. Another example. The epidemic grew over more serious. Now children as well as adults were being affected. Again, the second part is an explanation for the first part. So instead of putting a period and starting a new sentence, you can just put a colon and write your independent clause here. Also, we use the colon for sentences like this. Caution. Do not enter until car has come to a complete stop. So with warnings, when you want to draw people's attention, you use the word caution, warning, attention, colons, and then you start the sentence capitalized because what's after it is a full sentence. Next rule. Use a colon to introduce a long or formal quotation. A formal quotation is often preceded by such words: this, these, the following, as follows. Mrs. Hoskins asked us to write an essay on the following African saying: it is the rainy season that gives wealth. So usually the word following follows these and this. Whether it was a list or it was a quotation, you have to use actually the colon here. Poetry quotations of more than one line and prose quotations of more than 4 or 5 lines are generally written below the introductory statement and are intended on the page, like this example here. In this long poem, The Other Pioneers, Robert Felix Salazar describes some of the early settlers of the United States. And then there is the quote. And this is actually rarely used. The most common uses of colons are the one before. Like when you're listing, when you're writing a quotation, when what's next is explanation for what's before. And the last ones are of course the obvious ones here. With the clock, or the time, sorry, 12:30 a.m. colon. With when you're referring to a verse in a holy book, the number of the verse, the number of pages, like you separate them with the colon. This applies also to Quran, by the way. And when you are writing a formal letter and in the salutation, sir, and it's colon, it's not a comma. The comma is only for informal writings. You're writing for a friend, you're writing for someone you know, so it's a comma. But when it's a formal letter, a business letter, application letter, a recommendation letter, you'll have to use the colons here. Next rules are about the semicolon, and it's a revision because through the first term we actually talked a lot about the semicolon. When do we use the semicolon? Rule number 1. Use the semicolon to separate main clauses that are joined by a comma and a coordinating conjunction. And, but, or, nor, so, yet, or for. So for a variety of structure, if you want to change your structure, you can just remove the comma and the conjunction and use a semicolon. Look at the example here. Paul Robinson was a talented singer and actor, and he was also a famous football player. So instead of and the comma, I just put a semicolon. The next use is to separate main clauses that are joined by a conjunctive adverb, such as however, therefore, nevertheless, moreover, furthermore. So he's saying that Compound sentences can be separated with the conjunctive adverbs. So when you use them, you'll have to use the semicolon here. More examples, subsequently, or expressions such as for example or that is. Look at the sentence. Robinson appeared in many plays and musicals. For example, he starred in Othello and Porgy and Bess. Now, using for example in the middle of two independent clauses again. This is a full sentence. He starred in Othello and Porgy and Bess. And the beginning is also a full sentence. Robinson appeared in many plays and musicals. For example, a semicolon before it, a comma after it. Same thing applies for the conjunctives. Robinson appeared in Showboat in 1928. Subsequently, he acted in the films Jericho and Song of Freedom. Semicolon and comma. This is the first or the second use of semicolons. The next rule for semicolons is to use semicolons to separate items in a series when one or more of the items already contain commas. So actually the series thing we can use when we have a list of things or a series of things, we can use either colons, commas, or semicolons. But of course each has its rules. It's not like you can use them alternatively. Let's see, when do we use semicolons with a list or a series of things? It's when there is already a comma in the sentence, or there are commas in the sentence for a reason or another. So it will be confusing to separate the items with commas when there are already commas. So to avoid the confusion here, we use semicolons. How is that? Look at the long sentence here. Some of the powerful African kingdoms that flourished before the 16th century were. So he's gonna list things, and since he's using a verb here, I cannot put a colon after it. So look. Kush, which dominated the eastern Sudan, Karanga, which was located around Zimbabwe in southern Africa, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, which successively controlled the Niger River in West Africa, and Benin, which had its center in what is now Nigeria. So what is the things he is listing here? The names of the kingdoms. Kush. The comma here is for what? For the adjective clause. Okay? It starts with a comma. It ended with a semicolon. The semicolon also to start the second item, to show the second item starting here, which dominated the Eastern Sudan. Karanga, again, another clause here, which located around Zimbabwe in southern Africa. The third one is Ghana, and Mali, and Songhai, which excessively control the Niger River in South Africa. Here, semicolon. I know it's a little bit complicated, but the point is just to know that when the sentence is long and you have many commas, so before the items, to separate the items, I use a semicolon rather than a comma here. If you have a comma here and a comma here, it will be confusing because people will think that the end of the clause is here, when it is not actually. So the semicolon is to set off the clause before from the item after. Now in class tomorrow, or when we have the lesson, I'm going to show you more examples so to get this clear. The last rule is also related to the previous one. Use a semicolon to separate two main clauses joined by a coordinating conjunction when one or both of the clauses already contain several commas. The same thing, when there are many commas, you'll have to replace some of the commas with semicolons to avoid confusion. Look at this one here. The rule of Mansa Musa, the Muslim emperor of the African Kingdom of Mali from 1312 to 1337, is remembered for military success, trade expansion, and Muslim scholarship. But his period is probably most noteworthy as a golden age of peace and prosperity. So instead of putting a comma here, he put a semicolon just to avoid confusion. Now these two cases are the most problematic cases in semicolons. You might not find yourself really well dealing with them. We'll see more examples in class and try to practice more. Still, if you can't actually master them, just I'm telling you, this is no big deal.